So, the question of artistic originality in songwriting. Let's take a listen to a song that we probably all know just to get the ball rolling. So, as we all probably knew immediately as soon as the song came in, that's Ghostbusters. But did you know that this theme from Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. sounds very similar to I Want a New Drug by Huey Lewis? Well, what if I were to play you this lick on the piano? Oh, of course. It's Every School Dance. It's Ice Ice Baby. Or is it Under Pressure by Queen? They both use that same lick. Other examples of songs sounding like other songs include Bittersweet Symphony, and The Last Time, Transmitting Live from Mars, and You Showed Me, My Sweet Lord, and He's So Fine, Surfin' USA by the Beach Boys, as opposed to Sweet Little 16 by Chuck Berry, and the list could go on. There's a lot of songs that sound really similar to other songs that we've probably all realized just driving in the car, hearing something on the radio, saying, oh, I feel like I've heard this before, but not by this artist. Well, you see, music is much more than just noise we hear every day in the supermarket or on the radio. Music is one of the things that makes us human. It allows us to express ourselves in a way that language can't, through a medium that can be understood by anyone in the world. Sometimes, though, as we've just seen, the music we use to express ourselves may come out a little too similar to that of another artist. Isn't that the point of expressing ourselves, to make the music that we like and to show the world how we feel? Up until this point, there's been an indefinite line as to what's considered original as opposed to copied within the realm of songwriting. And as the present is already showing us, this can mean a lot of things for the fate of songwriting, as well as artists' artistic integrity for years to come. And why does this affect us? Well, you see, music is one of the things that represents our humanity. It's one of the arts. And if that thing that's representing our humanity is being misrepresented, then that's not fair to us as a species. It's important for us to have a say as to where our music's heading, the direction that music's heading. But to take a closer look at this, let's just examine very quickly Blurred Lines versus Got to Give It Up. Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke and Got to Give It Up by Marvin Gaye. A court case that happened actually very recently, as the pop song came out in 2013, because Robin Thicke's song, a lot of people considered sounding a little too similar to Marvin Gaye's. And let's take a quick listen just to see and form our own opinion on the matter.
Everybody get up.
And just a little bit of Got to Give It Up, just for comparison. Okay, yeah. You can definitely hear similarities. You can hear differences. But if I were to play them separately, it might be hard to tell which one it is, especially if you're not very familiar with either artist. Now, when it comes to this specific lawsuit, Blurred Lines versus Got to Give It Up, Robin Thicke did lose the lawsuit and lost millions of dollars because those two examples that you just heard, well, the court ruled that they sounded too similar. But really, it's a dangerous game when we start to draw this line and define what can be copied, what can't be copied, what's similar, and what's not similar at all. And I think for us to really get a feel for that, we need to take a look at songwriting itself. Now, you see, in songwriting, there's important elements, just like anything else. There's influences, inspirations, as well as those, there's common musical tendencies and stolen gestures, all of these things to consider. Common musical tendency, for example, would be the 4-chord progression that everyone claims to hear in every pop song ever, as opposed to stolen gestures, which would be what the court ruled in this case. Robin Thicke did with Got to Give It Up, took exactly the content from that song and put it in his song. Now, you see, after we've considered all of these elements in songwriting, then we need to start to form an analysis. Like, okay, well, what was he trying to do? Well, in this case, Robin Thicke's claim in court was he was trying to recreate the feeling of an era, and maybe he was doing that through the instrumentation. Maybe he was doing that with the beat. But on the other hand, we could also say that the fact that he chose that instrumentation and also chose a very similar key, it's a little too sketchy to say that he wrote that song. Now, what does this mean for songwriting? Well, all of this is leading up to the real conflict here. And the real conflict that we have to deal with here is the butting heads between artists who want to freely create their own material, as opposed to other artists who have already created that own material and want to keep it, make sure that those other artists don't take their own material. And of course, you have examples of this in every genre of music. The genres of music that I named earlier, hip-hop, for example, like sampling, even in classical music. But the real problem here is, well, where do we draw the line? What do we say can be original as opposed to important elements of songwriting, like influences and inspirations? Well, you see, there are certain things in music that are very definitive to music, such as melody lines, lyrics, but there are also other things, like I mentioned earlier, that would be a little too out there to call definitive, such as chord progressions, instrumentation, and I think that there needs to be a definitive line drawn right there with the definitive aspects of music. Otherwise, the music that for future generations from here on out will sound very different than how it sounds now. You see, once we start limiting artists, even if they came up with something, if there's so many copyright laws, it'd be super easy just for another artist to say that, oh, that was their song or that was their material, and they wouldn't be able to basically output that material that was original to them, that they did find on their own, essentially. Now, how do we do this? I think that the courts in particular need to recognize that there are these definitive aspects to music that need to be recognized, and those need to be held in a very high regard, because of course it is important, me being a songwriter, possibly you watching this, it is important to be able to create your own material as well as be able to make sure that the material that you've written is secure. But at the same time, there wouldn't be anything to secure if you don't have that openness to create your own material. But yeah, artistic originality in songwriting. This is a topic that we will see many more years to come than we've seen in the last 200 years, especially with the start of rock and roll, all the way up until now, like Blurred Lines and pop music. But it's really about the waiting game to see where music will go and what direction our music will head in. And like I said, it might seem very different, the music we hear 10 years from now, than the music created today.